Hello, everybody. It's me, Ian Rodriguez, with the 28-day challenge, the 28 days through the Gospel of Matthew. We are day 26. We are leading up to the cross today. And there are a few things that are described in chapter 26 that lead up to the crucifixion that are key, that are even mentioned in other Gospels as well, as we unpack and go on our journey to Calvary. So, chapter 26, anointed for burial. It says, when Jesus finished saying these things, which yesterday we talked about the three parables, right? It says, he told his disciples, you know that the Passover comes in 2 days. So if you have this in your Bible, you can highlight that. And if you take note of Holy Week, this would have made it Wednesday. That's when the Son of Man will be betrayed and handed over for crucifixion. And at that very moment, the party of high priests and religious leaders was meeting in the chambers of the chief priest and the Caiaphas, conspiring to seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. Jesus here is letting them know that these things are about to happen. He's about to be betrayed. He's going to be crucified. It says he's going to be handed over for crucifixion. And at the same time that he begins to have this conversation, another conversation is happening with the chief priest and Caiaphas, who would have been one of the main leaders who makes decisions over the Jewish people. And they start conspiring to seize Jesus by stealth and kill him. And they agreed that it should not be done during Passover week. We don't want a riot on our hands, they said. So they knew that they were about to enter in the Passover week, and they didn't want to do it during that week because everybody's emotions are high. We know that we have just come off of Palm Sunday when everyone is yelling Hosanna. We see Jesus then going into the temple, and he's ruffling all the religious feathers there. And then he's taking his disciples and having some very important, intimate conversations about kingdom with them as he's preparing them, not just for his crucifixion, but the second coming as well. And so we see all of this is all transpiring right now like a tornado that's about to just start forming. These things are happening simultaneously, and Jesus knows it. He knows that this is the hour. So when Jesus was at Bethany, a guest of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him as he was eating dinner and anointed him with a bottle of very expensive perfume. Now, in my version here, it may sound like this just happened at this moment, and it could have. Matthew may be describing it here, but we know that in John that this actually happened probably about a week before Jesus is going to go to the cross. And here Matthew is sort of putting it here. There's really no real context around when it might have happened. It may seem as though that he said these things and then it happened, and it could have been that way, but we know that in John's gospel he gives us a specific date that this happened, but we know that it's written here in Matthew like as though it happened. All of this is happening right here in this moment that Jesus is unpacking this, but I think it's just sort of something Matthew is letting us know happened, okay? Is kind of how I'm reading it, just because in the Gospel of John, he gives an actual date, which was about a week before the crucifixion that it happened. So Matthew may be just saying, hey, and this happened. And we know that it says woman. In Matthew, it doesn't give us the name, but many may say that this was Mary Magdalene, or Mary, the sister of Lazarus, the one that Jesus rose from the dead. Remember when Lazarus died and he goes there, and it would have been Mary. We know this based on John's gospel, not Matthew's gospel, but we see the same scenario here. But Matthew, it just says when Jesus was at Bethany. And so we don't know whether that's because he's at Bethany in this moment or because when he was at Bethany before. Matthew's just sort of letting us know that this happened, that this expensive perfume was poured out on Jesus. It says, when the disciples saw this was happening, they were furious. That's criminal. This could have been sold for a lot of money and handed to the poor. The disciples don't understand what this woman is doing. But one disciple in particular, then, this is going to sort of be a deal breaker for Judas in this moment. And so we see that they're like, what are you doing? You're wasting this very expensive perfume. If you were going to get rid of it, you should have sold it and we could have fed the poor with it. And when Jesus realized what was going on, he intervened. Why are you giving this woman a hard time? She has just done something wonderfully significant for me. You will have the poor with you every day for the rest of your lives, but not me. It says, when she poured this perfume on my body, what she really did was anoint me for burial. Wow. You can be sure that wherever in the whole world the message is preached, what she has done is going to be remembered and admired. She was preparing him, he said, for my burial. There was something in her spirit that the Holy Spirit had told her, in a sense, in some way. There was an acknowledgement, and she probably was doing this to just pour it all out, to pour out something that was extremely costly to her, out to her rabbi, her master, her Lord. But actually, it was a kingdom significance to what she was doing, so much so that Jesus said it's going to be remembered everywhere the message is preached, what this woman did. That is when one of the 12, here we are, the one named Judas Iscariot, went to the cabal of high priests and said, what will you give me if I hand him over to you? And they settled on 30 silver pieces. And he began looking for just the right moment to hand him over. So we know that when this took place, whether, like I said, it could have been days ago, something happened to Judas. Something there became a deal breaker for him, and that he is now going to betray the one that he has done life with now for almost 3 years. Something there is transpiring. Something there is going on that he now feels the need to hand Jesus over. The traitor. So on the first of the days of unleavened bread, which would have been Thursday, the disciples came to Jesus and said, where do you want us to prepare your Passover meal? He said, enter the city, go up to a certain man and say, the teacher says the time is near. I and my disciples plan to celebrate the Passover meal at your house. And the disciples followed Jesus' instructions to the letter and prepared the Passover meal. And after sunset, so this would have been Thursday again, he's going to have the Last Supper. This would have been right before the beginning of the 7-day festival of Passover that they're going to have. After sunset, he and the 12 were sitting around the table. During the meal, he said, I have something hard but important to say to you. One of you is going to hand me over to the conspirators. The next sentence says, they were stunned and began to ask one after another, it isn't me, is it, Master? Now, I want you to think about this. We know that it's Judas. Matthew has now given Judas's name for the first time. We know that John mentions it also, the betrayer, right? Even throughout the beginning of his gospel. But this is the first time that Matthew is sort of even letting us know about Judas, is in chapter 26. Where John continually over and over, we see more of the reasons that Judas was conspiring against him. And so now we're beginning to see that Jesus loved in such a way that none of them knew who it was that was going to betray them, that they actually thought, is it going to be me? Jesus loved so well. He loved his betrayer so well that no one would have even thought that it was Judas. And this is because Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him. Now, I don't know about y'all, but we see here that Jesus does not act out of his flesh ever. He was fully flesh, fully man, but he had full authority over his flesh at all times. That even his enemy he loved, even up to this moment, that it stunned the disciples so much when he said it. They had done life together, lived intimately and close together. Had all of these conversations been pulled in to Jesus, where he clarified a lot of his parables and his teachings with them, that they were there shocked and stunned that one of them, if not themselves, would be the one that would betray the Christ. And Jesus answered, the one who hands me over is someone I eat with daily, one who passes me food at the table. Wow. In one sense, the Son of Man is entering into a way of treachery well marked by the scriptures. No surprises here. In another sense, that man who turns him in turns traitor to the Son of Man. Better never to have been born. than to do this. In one instance, he says, this has always been the plan. This has always been the plan of redemption for all of mankind. And in another sense, woe to the man who actually has to do it. Kingdom mysteries here revealed. So good. Then Judas, already turned traitor, it says, it isn't me, is it, Rabbi? Wow. And Jesus said, don't play games with me, Judas. And this is the Message version that says it, that makes this moment that he is confronted. And Judas is saying this, it isn't me, is it? And he knows good and well that it's him. And he's asking this of a prophet. And Jesus then in the Message, it says, don't be playing games with me, Judas. I know it's you. Go and do what you must do. Wow. And that just shows there that Jesus submitted fully to the plan of God, to the will of God for the redemption of humanity. And that no matter what the murder plot was and the scheme of the enemy, it was always Jesus's choice. And he wanted to make it very clear to Judas that you may betray me and think you're handing me over, but actually I am the one who hands my life over. No one takes it from me. Wow. The bread and the cup. It says, during the meal, Jesus took and blessed the bread, broke it, and gave it to his disciples. Take, eat, this is my body. Taking the cup and thanking God, he gave it to them. Drink this, all of you. This is my blood. So these are the communion elements in which we partake of his body and his blood through the partaking of the bread, the small piece of matzah, unleavened bread, and drinking the cup, which would have represented the covenant of his blood in this moment. It says, God's new covenant poured out for many people for the forgiveness of sins. This is why communion is so extremely important. It says, I'll not be drinking wine from this cup again until that new day when I'll drink with you in the kingdom of my Father. So they sang a hymn and went directly to Mount Olives. And I want you to understand here, Judas, the betrayer, the so-called enemy of God, the conspirer against Jesus, the Christ, he got communion with Christ in this moment. He had not yet left to go and betray Jesus. I want you to understand how significant communion is. That even his enemy, his betrayer, the conspirator against the Messiah and the Christ, got to partake in the body and the blood covenant that Jesus is making. The new covenant poured out for all people, for all mankind, for the forgiveness of all sin. So if Judas was able to partake of that communion, so are you, friend. You are not so far gone. Don't let the enemy ever tell you that what Jesus did doesn't include you, all right? Because it even included Judas. Come on. And then he tells them that he is not going to be drinking another cup, so to speak, with them again until he's with them in the kingdom, when we are seated at the wedding feast of our bridegroom, as we, the bride, sit in the place that he has prepared for us, seated in heavenly places with him. And we see that as he will then, when he goes to the cross, especially in John, we'll talk about the dismissed cups that he doesn't drink because he fully wants to experience the horrific pain that is happening in his body. He doesn't want to be numbed to the experience through any kind of narcotic. And he will pass those cups and drink the cup of suffering. They sang a hymn and went directly up to Mount Olives. So here they are up here. And this is an olive grove. Gethsemane means olive grove or olive orchard. And that's where they're going. It says, and Jesus told them, before the night's over, you're going to fall to pieces because of what happens to me. There is a scripture that says, I'll strike the shepherd, helter-skelter of the sheep will be scattered. But after I'm raised up, I, your shepherd, will go ahead of you, leading way to Galilee. Peter broke in. Even if everyone else falls to pieces on account of you, I won't. Here's Peter talking again, saying that I will never leave you. I will never betray. I will never, ever leave your side, Jesus. And I will defend you. I will protect you. I will die for you if I have to. And this is what Jesus says. He says, don't be so sure. Wow. Jesus knows our heart. He says, this very night before the rooster crows up at dawn, you will deny me 3 times. 3 times, Peter, you're going to deny me before the rooster crows. Peter protested, even if I have to die with you, I would never deny you. And all the others said the same thing. Then Jesus went with them to the garden called Gethsemane and told his disciples, stay here while I go over there and pray. Taking along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, which are James and John, okay, he plunged into an agonizing sorrow. And then he said, this sorrow is crushing my life out. Stay here and keep vigil with me. Stay awake. Stay and let's pray. Stay awake. Don't fall asleep. And going a little ahead, he fell on his face praying, my Father, if there's any way, get me out of this, but please, not what I want. What do you want? Not my will, but your will. We see Jesus in deep anguish and sorrow, beginning now to imagine the crushing. And I'm sure this is weighing so heavy that we know he cries tears of blood in this anguish. But he's totally submitted to the will of God, his Father. This is when he came back to his disciples, he found them sound asleep. So he goes back and the 3 of them are asleep. And then he says to Peter, so it looks like he only wakes up Peter. I want you to take note of this in your word. This is extremely important. That even though they were all 3 asleep, he wakes up Peter, and this is what he says. Can't you stick it out with me a single hour? Weren't you the one who was just saying you would die for me? That there could be no way? And I'm telling you that you were going to deny me and you fall asleep? Stay alert. Be in prayer so you don't wander into temptation without even knowing you're in danger. There is a part of you that is eager, ready for anything in God, but there's another part that is as lazy as an old dog sleeping by the fire. Peter, you are like 2 people wrestling within yourself. One is full of passion. You get yourself in trouble because you speak so boldly at times and so prematurely at times. You're there filled with passion, almost not even afraid to say the wrong thing. And in the next moment, lazy as a dog by a fire. I can't move you. I just told you to stay awake and pray. I just told you you're going to deny me 3 times. And you weren't even praying for your own self. You weren't praying for me and you weren't praying for you. And you were going to deny me. This didn't move you enough that you were just going to say, when I said stay alert, when I said stay awake and pray, when I said to be right here. And he didn't wake up James and John. This is the thing. He's talking to Peter here because he had told Peter that Peter was going to be the one that was going to deny him 3 times. It would be John, not James, but John, who would stay with him to the bitter end at the cross. So he's talking to Peter here. And I know that this may fall on some of you who are Peters. You're zealous for God. You have a passion for him. And then the next moment you're lazy. You have that place, where you want to preach the gospel, you're on fire for him, and you want everything to be comfortable and easy as you do it. And as soon as it gets hard, you throw in the towel. As soon as he tells you to fast, and you start to fast, and you get hungry, you get thirsty, you are like, you know what, Lord, this is a little bit hard, or you know what, Lord, just forgive me. I gotta get a snack. And you can't do the hard thing. You say that you can, but you're all talk. That's Peter. And he's confronting that place in us because he says the devil wants to sift you like wheat. The devil sees that you're halfway in, halfway out. You talk a good game over here, but then as soon as something else happens, you're a little lazy in your faith. The devil sees you. He studies you. He knows that. And he's telling Peter, stay alert, Peter. The devil is after you. You have a huge target on your back. So he says, stay alert, be in prayer so you don't wander into temptation without even knowing you're in danger. There is a part of you that is eager. It says, he then left them a second time, and again he prayed, my Father, if there's no other way than this, drinking this cup to the dregs, I'm ready. Do it your way. And when he came back, he again found them sound asleep. Goodness, they simply couldn't keep their eyes open. This time he let them sleep on, and he went back a third time to pray, going over the same ground one last time. So instead, he's like, okay, I'll let you sleep. And when he came back the next time, he said, are you going to sleep on and make a night of it? My time is up. The Son of Man is about to be handed over to the hands of sinners. Get up. Let's get going. My betrayer is here. Whoa. With swords and clubs. It says these words were barely out of his mouth when Judas, the one from the 12, showed up, and with him a gang of the high priests and religious leaders brandishing swords and clubs. Wow. The betrayer had worked out a sign with them. The one I kissed, that's the one. Seize him. And he went straight to Jesus, greeted him. How are you, Rabbi? And kissed him. Jesus said, friend, why this charade? And then they came on him, grabbed him, roughed him up. One of those with Jesus pulled out his sword, and we know this to be Peter. In another gospel, it tells us who it is. And taking a swing at the chief priest's servant, cut off his ear. Oh my gosh. And Jesus said, put your sword back where it belongs. All those who use swords are destroyed by swords. Don't you realize that I am able right now to call my Father and 12 companies more if I want them of fighting angels? They would be here, battle ready. But if I did that, how would the scriptures come true that say this is the way it has to be? He literally, in another gospel, it says that Jesus picked up his ear and he actually healed and put the ear back on the gentleman. But he's saying, why? Don't you think you came at me in sword and clubs? Don't you think that I could call angel armies right now and you would be wiped out like that if they became present? But the truth is, this all has to be this way because it's the Father's will. This is what must be fulfilled. And then Jesus addressed the mob. What is this? Coming after me with swords and clubs, as if I were a dangerous criminal, right? Day after day, I have been sitting in the temple teaching, and you have never so much as lifted a hand against me. I've done it this way to confirm and fulfill the prophetic writings. Then all the disciples cut and ran. They all scattered, just as he had just said earlier in the text. False charges. This is the gang that had seized Jesus, led him before Caiaphas, the chief priest. Remember, we talked about him conspiring with Judas and these other religious leaders, where the religion scholars and leaders had assembled. And Peter followed at a safe distance until they got to the chief priest's courtyard. And then he slipped in and mingled with the servants, watching to see how things would turn out. So this is Peter. He's there. He's hiding. He's trying to kind of mingle and look like he wasn't one of the disciples is what he's trying to do. And the high priest, conspiring with the Jewish council, tried to cook up charges against Jesus in order to sentence him to death. But even though many stepped up, making up one false accusation after another, nothing was believable. So they start lying on Jesus and nobody believed them. Finally, 2 men came forward and said this. He said, I can tear down this temple of God and after 3 days rebuild it. What was he talking about here? He's talking about the crucifixion, but they're taking it literal that that's what he said and that's what he meant. The chief priest stood up and said, what do you have to say to this accusation? And Jesus kept silent. Why? Because he doesn't need to address them about what it was he was meaning, because it's all playing out in real time. And then the chief priest said, I command you by the authority of the living God to say if you're the Messiah, the Son of God. And Jesus was curt. You yourself said it. Whoa. And that's not all. Soon you'll see it for yourself. What is he meaning? Pretty soon you're going to see it. After you've crucified me, what's going to happen? Hindsight's going to be 2020. That's what's going to happen. This is the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Mighty One, arriving on the clouds of heaven. You're going to see it on that day when I come barreling through the heavenly gates. And at that, the chief priest lost his temper, ripping his robes. Oh, he's pretty mad. Yelling, he blasphemed. Why do we need witnesses to accuse him? You have heard him blaspheme. Are you going to stand for such blasphemy? He's calling himself God. He's calling himself the Son of Man. And yet Jesus is saying, that's what you've said. That's what you've seen. That's what you know deep down. And yet you are accusing me, and you're trying to falsely accuse me. And it's not landing the way that you want it to. And they all said, death. That seals his death sentence. And then they were spitting in his face and banging him around, and they jeered as they slapped him. Prophesy, Messiah, who hit you that time? They begin to bully, hurt, and abuse the Messiah. Denial in the courtyard. So it's getting physical. It's getting violent. We see Peter is here hiding. All the other disciples have scattered, but Peter is really curious. What is going to happen to my rabbi? And all this time, Peter was sitting out in the courtyard. One of the servant girls came up to him and said, you were with Jesus of the Galilean. In front of everybody there, he denied it. I don't know what you're talking about. As he moved toward the gate, someone else said to the people there, this man was with Jesus the Nazarene. Again, he denied it, salting his denial with an oath. I swear I never laid eyes on him. This is as though he's cursing, saying curse. I swear you're not supposed to do that. And he does, to be convincing now that he's not one of his disciples. Shortly after that, some bystanders approached Peter. You've got to be one of them. Your accent gives you away. You sound like him. You sound like him. It's undeniable. You have to have been one of his disciples. And then he got really nervous and swore, I don't know the man. Wow. Just then a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and cried and cried and cried. Can you imagine how Peter felt in that moment? He was even cussing, trying to convince them that he was not one of the disciples, that he was not with Jesus. But here's the thing about that. When you're a child of God, it's evident. It's evident. You know, I think about those of you right now that are maybe trying to change some of the behaviors in your life. And maybe you find it really hard, and maybe still on a Friday or Saturday night, you find yourself somewhere that you know you shouldn't be, that the Holy Spirit brings conviction quickly. And maybe this particular moment, you can relate to Peter in that way. That there have been things that you have felt have almost denied Christ in your life. And yet people see it on you. There might even be a person sitting next to you sometimes when you're at the bar or the club that's like, what are you doing here? Somebody may just be able to see that you're in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. That is probably my testimony. There would be people like, what are you doing? You shouldn't be here right now. And you just want to what? No, I'm not called in that way. No. And we make excuses and we deny the call, or we deny ourselves as children of God. We deny Jesus in those moments. But I'm going to tell you here right now, even though this is a very sobering moment for Peter, there will be great reconciliation. And he doesn't know it now. And maybe some of you, this is your story and you need this encouragement. This is not where Peter's story ends. See you tomorrow, friends. Bye.